calling this Sherburne County Board meeting of today. Please rise for a moment of silence and the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, moving on to the next item on our agenda is our consent agenda. And are there any additions or deletions to consider? Bruce, you had talked about amending the number 17.
Thank you, Chair Danielowski and members of the commission. With the board's permission, before you accept your agenda today.
We're dealing with the regular agenda, not the consent agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. My mistake.
Staff would like to know if the board would be amenable to slightly amending consent item 17 and to make the approval contingent upon final county attorney review and approval as to form. That item did not get through the attorney's office, and I apologize for that. It can remain on consent if the board is comfortable. We just ask that we will add into the record that that approval by the board is contingent upon final county attorney approval.
Okay, I'll back it up one. I'm looking for an approval of our regular meeting proposed agenda.
Is the agenda, any changes to that agenda?
Chair Danielowski, Commissioner Schmiesing, given that we're missing a commissioner and there might have been some dialogue at the Planning Commission that we were not aware of between members of the Planning Commission regarding item 5.1 and 5.2, staff would suggest that there at least be a discussion whether you wanted to table those items or if you wanted to continue with them. But as far as a hard recommendation, no.
Madam Chair, I'll move the agenda as presented.
Okay, there's a motion by Commissioner Schmiesing,
I'll second.
seconded by Commissioner Dolan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Now the consent agenda. There has been a request for amending consent agenda item number 17 to include the language approved based on review by the county attorney and approval.
Madam Chair, I'll move the consent agenda with that change noted.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Dolan,
I'll second, Madam Chair.
seconded by Commissioner Schmiesing. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. At this time, we'll be moving on to item number 3 on our consent agenda, or our agenda, announcements. Bruce.
Thank you, Chair Danielowski. Just a couple of calendar items real quick, and I think most are in your packet. First of all, we would note for the board, we do have a special meeting scheduled for next week with the Elk River City Council. Just a reminder, and we will be hosting that joint meeting. Second of all is, with the board's permission, just a heads up, on August 3rd, following your meeting, we would like to have a ice cream social with staff to thank everyone for the work during the pandemic. The department directors, as you'll recall a few years ago, they would come in and serve, and it would just be an open house. The impetus for this is the governor has declared July 27th as a appreciation day for public employees for the COVID work. We would have a local declaration of thanks on August 3rd's agenda to be followed by an ice cream social. And I'm hoping that might be something you would be comfortable doing. Again, we're not asking for the proclamation today, but just being aware that the thinking would be following the board meeting on the 3rd, we would have a thank you for staff. Any feedback or comments on that? Okay, seeing none, again, the proclamation would be on the August 3rd agenda followed by that. A couple other notes. Andrew sent out some good news about some of his grant funding requests, and wanted to share them publicly with you and make sure everybody was aware of that good work. We're getting closer to getting some funding lined up for both possible that park acquisition as well as for other parks activities. And then finally, just a note for everybody in the community that after 29 plus years of service, Nancy Riddle has decided to ride or walk off into the sunset and retire. So it was 29 years on June 1st, and she'll put in another 3 weeks and help us with transition. And I know that the board and the community joins me in congratulating her on her announced retirement.
And I'd like to personally add too, thank you very much for those years of service, Nancy. You served the county well, and I know that you're going to retirement, from what I hear, people just, you're doing it at the right time. You got some summer activities you can do, and you'll be busier, I'm sure, than when you were working, if that's even possible.
Thank you.
All right, moving on then to our next item on the agenda, our open forum. There was a sign-up sheet at the back of the room for anybody that wished to address the county board at open forum. The purpose of the open forum of the county board is to allow public input and/or information to be presented to the board that does not require action by the board. Personal attacks of any kind against another person, a commissioner or employee are not allowed. Campaign-type presentations are not allowed. The time limit is 3 minutes per speaker with a maximum of 5 speakers per open forum. The time limit may be shortened or extended at the discretion of the board chair. Discussions that require additional time beyond the original 15 minutes will be recessed and continued following the conclusion of the regular board business meeting agenda. All input of information is to be addressed to the Board of Commissioners and not to members of the audience. Speaker handouts are public information. The county may make copies of such handouts for public if needed, and the county board chair will ensure that the open forum policy is followed. Now, just to clarify, I know we have a room full of people that want to address the board. If it's a topic that people that have gone to the podium are basically speaking to what you're here to speak to as well, we kind of ask that you kind of decide who are going to be your speaker people on that topic. So there is not a lot of repetitive. So anyways, Keisha, who do we have first?
First of all, I want to state that we have 8 signed up.
Okay.
First, we have Kathy Zebarth from Elk River talking on the parking ordinance.
Hi, Kathy, welcome.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. We're not here as an organized group as far as for the parking ordinance, just so you know, you said have people speak. We don't know each other. I was sent some information by Bruce Messelt and was able to see what existing and what is proposed for parking or the current parking ordinance. My first question would be, if the current ordinance says, and I'm quoting what Bruce sent me, all landowners shall be allowed to store no more than 2 inoperable and unlicensed motor vehicles outside, then why is this not being enforced that a follow-up law is necessary? According to Bruce's email, in 2018, a draft ordinance was sent to the townships to place new parking restrictions in platted and unplanted land, requiring all vehicles to be parked on an approved surface. It was not well received by townships, and zoning withdrew it, and it went back to the drawing board. Okay, well, perhaps this new ordinance wouldn't pass anyway, because I know that I spoke with Bruce already, that many of the population doesn't even know what's going on. Well, perhaps this new ordinance would not be received well if more people knew about it here. You are limiting families and tax-paying citizens, meaning the license tabs for these vehicles. I live in the woods. We planned where we built so that there were no HOAs, no businesses, and rules that would limit us. In our driveway land, I have cars. I have adult children, a commuter vehicle, and a camper and a tow vehicle. So I'm already over your limit right now. And my neighbors have never said a word and would never have a reason to, because it doesn't look unkempt. So you're suggesting on 2.5 acres. So we moved to the woods and did not intend to have a parking lot cover up our grass. But if we have more cars for the temporary time where we are in the season that we're in, we need to do that without having to pay more money to have it paved. We are not an eyesore, but your new ordinance would make us lawbreakers, spend money and lose grassy areas to appease a group of people who are not willing to enforce laws that already exist. This removes the option of people being able to spend their hard-earned money in the ways they choose. Your current ordinance says no more than 2 unlicensed vehicles. The pictures Bruce sent me surely exceed that limit. Why are the abusers not penalized now? Why lump the people who have not abused this law into a stricter law when you can't even enforce the one you have? Law-abiding citizens will get the gravel or pavement or get rid of their cars because that's what we do. But it will burden us. Why do this to us? I think every family who pays the tax to have their car licensed should be allowed to have what they deem necessary for their family. The current law is two unlicensed vehicles. Sounds good to me. Enforce what you already have and leave the other people alone. People who have driveways and properties filled with old, unusable vehicles, according to your definition, won't pay the taxes to get them all licensed. Bruce corrected me on that earlier, saying people did get their cars licensed. I dare say they wouldn't all. If you were privy to the discussions on Facebook this week on the community forums, I think you would see that there are 4 more people against this ordinance than for it. And I ask that it not be voted on in the next few months, that it be sent back to planning and where there's more public options to be able to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Next, we have James Bonin for the Second Amendment.
Welcome, James.
Hello, thank you again for allowing me to speak and pursue this. I really would like you guys to put this on the agenda as a topic to talk about and to vote on as a commission. At the national level, they're attacking our Second Amendment rights every day. The ATF is currently working to go against the Second Amendment. Our president has said he's going to go against the Second Amendment. The Minnesota State House of Legislators 2 years ago passed laws, red flag laws, and registration laws that go against the Second Amendment. So this is being infringed all around us. I'm asking you here in Sherburne County that no matter what happens in the rest of this country, we stand for the U.S. Constitution, which the Second Amendment is the second amendment to that Constitution. It was put there for a reason. Our founders put these things in order of importance: the speech, the right to defend that speech, and on down the line. George Washington, in his farewell address, addressed the issue of people subverting the Constitution. If that's ever done, we cannot let that happen here. And I really want Sherburne County to stand up for the Constitution and the Second Amendment. I have copies of a resolution that was passed by Meeker County a year ago, approximately a year ago. I gave you 3 copies, other copies that we like, and I'd like to present this to you too, if I could.
Yes, you can. You can give it to Keisha, and she can pass it on to us.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, James.
Next, we have Thomas Huffman from Big Lake for the Second Amendment.
Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a Vietnam combat veteran. I was a door gunner with the 173rd Airborne and then came back with the 1st Infantry Division and did projects in Germany with 10,000 Russian tanks on the border. The fact that our board won't listen to this, I moved here 2 years ago from Wright County. It was overwhelmingly approved at Wright County, and I don't see the difference between the people in Wright and Sherburne. Does not seem to be that different. In fact, this county has more concealed carry people than Wright does by a percentage of the population. So I'm disconcerted that nobody's looking at there's a big petition that was brought in at the last meeting. Everybody I've talked to personally believes that this should be a sanctuary county. We've got the federal government now saying they're going to send agents to my house to violate HIPAA and to see if I've had a vaccine. When we get to that point, we're right at the point of anarchy. The federal government really has no business in Sherburne County, and I would hope our sheriff would keep the feds out of this county, period. Those types of things are against pretty much everything our Constitution stands for. But I'd like to see our board at least listen to the people of this county, because the petitions are pretty overwhelmingly in favor of this sanctuary city, or sanctuary county, sorry.
Thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Jeff Jones of Big Lake speaking on the parking ordinance.
Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'll keep it brief. I'm in agreement with the first speaker as far as reconsidering the amendment of the parking ordinance. I think a lot of times in society there's stereotypes. When people have cars without current registration or project cars in their driveway, they think that they're broke or they're uneducated. I'm here to tell you that's not the case. It's our choice to move from the cities out to Big Lake. We have boats, we have collector cars. We're constantly having neighbors drive by and point the finger and, you know, why do you have so many cars? We've been trying for 2 years to work with Big Lake Township to get an outbuilding built, but because of the restrictions and the setbacks, we're trying to determine at this point what we're going to do with the cost of building materials to get that building built. But in the meantime, this would be definitely a reason for us to leave Big Lake Township if something like this ordinance continues to look at being amended. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Lisa Miller of Big Lake. It does not state what her issue of topic is.
She's going to let us know. Welcome, Lisa.
Hello. Yep, I'm also talking about the parking ordinance. I live on Eagle Lake. Myself and many of my neighbors, we have cabin homes that were built 100 years ago. We don't have solid surface. A lot of it is grass. It's been that way for almost 100 years. For that kind of an impact, not to mention the limit on how many vehicles you can have. So every weekend when everybody comes up to the family cabin, sorry, only 2 of you can visit this week. It just is very concerning to put a blanket statement out there that hits all areas of Sherburne County that really don't have a problem, you know, especially lakefront. So that's just kind of my concern is it's really, we're zoned rural and agricultural. It really doesn't apply here, you know, that's just my thought.
Thank you, Lisa, for your comments.
Next, we have Ron Hawkins on the parking ordinance.
Welcome, Ron.
Morning, thank you. I had a couple of things I wanted to point out or talk about regarding the ordinance, and something interrupted that. Out in the hallway, I found the Sherburne County mission statement plaque in a display case. It says, to provide the necessary services in a cost-effective manner to support quality of life for Sherburne County citizens. Sherburne County citizens, quality of life. That's kind of redirected my point that I wanted to make today. I'm for the parking ordinance improvements, primarily because of the environmental concern. Vehicles, old, new, unused, they leak. Gaskets, seals, O-rings, they all deteriorate over time if not attended to. Leaking fluids of oil, gasoline, coolant into the soil. That soil is what your private well is drilled into. We should all be concerned about that. Not to mention the runoff to our watersheds. A lot of us live on watersheds. That runoff is detrimental to everything around. I guess with that point, I'll make it brief and thank you for the time.
Thank you for your comments, Ron.
Next, we have Kelly Thomas of Elk River on the parking ordinance.
Welcome, Kelly.
Hi, I really have a question. Is the purpose of this ordinance to get rid of derelict vehicles?
In the open for comment period, we don't do an interaction.
All right.
You
but
give
I'm
us your
thinking
statements.
That is the purpose. The extra vehicles, the running vehicles, the not running vehicles. I think maybe we're missing the point and we're over legislating. and I'd like you to consider that, because I feel, very much like Kathy had said, this is giving the HOA power to our neighbors. We all moved out here and put some space between ourselves and our neighbors, and for somebody to call and say, oh, I think she's got too many cars this weekend. I'm just really worried that we're just overstepping the bounds of between what we need to do and what we should. In a hard paved surface, in a car that leaks gasoline and coolant, it just runs off the hard paved surface to the other surface. That is just a technicality. Derelict vehicles that leak is very different from vehicles that aren't leaking. I think we need to be much more specific. And to your point, sir, everybody lives on a watershed. Everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Kelly.
And lastly, we have Steve Fuchs on the parking ordinance.
Good morning, everybody.
Welcome, Steve. You can give them anything you want to pass to us, give to Keisha.
They have them. We already printed these out. They have them.
You have these with you now?
Yes,
You have these with you?
yes.
Maybe they can read it through the room.
I'm a citizen of Sherburne County. I live in a plotted subdivision. We bought our property in 2014. We bought 5 acres down by the St. Francis River. This property was heavily wooded. It's heavily infested with buckthorn. And since 2015, I've spent the springs and the falls out removing buckthorn and dead oak trees off my property. And while I'm out there working, I have had just about every neighbor in my plotted subdivision, as well as other plotted subdivisions, swing by and compliment me on how this forest is turning around, looking favorable. They've stopped by multiple times. I helped them on how to clean up their woods, and eventually we began a dialogue. And they always ask me, how can you even stand living next to that neighbor? What a junk hole, what an S-hole. I've had neighbors stop by an ATV saying, man, I'm sure glad I'm not living next to that. And their mouth drops to the floor when I tell them, I says, this can easily happen to you. When your neighbor decides to sell their property and a new person moves in and decides to accumulate, and accumulate, and accumulate. And now they're becoming increasingly worried because they're worried about their property values. And if you turn to page 1 on what I sent you, this is usually the property they start talking about. And it's gotten so bad that when contractors are paving our roads, they ask us about this property. It is so bad that when I have filming crews coming from New York, I'm putting together a documentary, and they sit at my kitchen table and they look out my window and they say, what in the hell is going on with that neighbor? And people now are saying, what can be done? And I say, well, the county has no ordinance.
Yes, I do.
And so therefore, please do not answer my question, okay? So this ordinance is to address the inconvenience that these people are currently experiencing, these dozens and dozens of people. But also, an issue is when you turn to page 3 and 4, you're going to see how vehicles are parked very close to wetlands. And well, Mr. Hawkins pointed out that these wetlands are protected by the Wetlands Restoration Act of 1991, and zoning has responsibility for administrating that act. And zoning does not have the resources to manage these vehicles parked next to these wetlands. And you'll see on picture number 3 and picture number 4, and in particular picture number 4, there are old snowmobiles sitting down there right adjacent to a wetland. There's old ATVs, there's old boats, there's old trailers leaking axle grease. Like what Mr. Hawkins said, all this stuff leaches into our ground and get into our wetlands. So what is needed is a reasonable standard, and that's what we're asking for, is a reasonable standard on property maintenance and care. And we have to find a balance between people's private property rights and the property rights of the community. And trying to find that balance, and so people don't have to put up with having guests over to their place and all they talk about is these junk and blight neighborhoods. And yet people have the right to keep what they want on their property. And I think that's why this ordinance is so important. It's not perfect, but at least it begins to help zoning get a handle on the chronic abusers. So I vote in favor of this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Fuchs. Anybody that would like to see what Mr. Fuchs handed out is more than welcome. There's some copies up there with Keisha. All right. Keisha, anybody else?
That is everybody, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Madam Chair,
Pardon?
may I address, in light of the presentations that have just gone on, may I address the commission?
Okay, well, we'll have one more commenter.
Could you please state your name and where you reside?
Okay, good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
My name is Nathan Haskell. I live at 18645 222nd Avenue Northwest in Big Lake Township, Sherburne County. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak in support of the proposed platted subdivision improved surface parking amendment to the Sherburne County zoning ordinance. When things go wrong or don't work as they should, it often means that standards are absent. And standards are the distilled wisdom of people with expertise in the subject matter and who know the needs of the groups they represent. In this case, for this ordinance proposed amendment, property owners from a platted subdivision and zoning ordinance staff, personnel from Sherburne County Planning and Zoning Department work together to reach what we consider to be a fairly equitable and reasonable approach to protecting the property owners, both those that believe that they ought to be free to do what they want, as well as those that feel that they don't want their property values impacted by the other property owners. And they feel that they ought to have an opportunity to protect their local environment. I sent an email to each of you earlier this week explaining that without an enforceable standard, I and other property owners fear that property values will be negatively impacted, that the local environment will be negatively impacted by leaking fluids and rodent infestations that always accompany these situations, and that new residents will view these blight properties as the de facto standard of property care and maintenance. Now that's important. Why would we want the lowest possible standard? Along with several of my neighbors, we began working with Nancy Riddle, Mark Schneider, and others at Sherburne County over 2 years ago in an effort to arrive at an equitable, enforceable amendment to the zoning ordinance that maintains our property values, adequately protects the environment, and provides the quality of life that caused us to locate here in Sherburne County. Most of the heavy lifting has been done by Nancy, Mark, and other Sherburne County staff personnel. It's been an arduous task, no doubt, because we've been trying to balance these two perspectives. The results of our collective effort are embodied in the proposed platted subdivision improved surface parking amendment to the Sherburne County zoning ordinance. I urge you to approve and adopt those proposed ordinance amendment. And I appreciate the opportunity to have been able to speak here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And thank you, everybody, for being willing to step up and voice your concerns and your thoughts. There will be a presentation on the item 5.1 that I think will help do some clarification, help address some of the misconceptions that appear to be out there as well. So I appreciate your time to come out and share your thoughts with us. Okay.
Madam Chair, will I have a chance to address the RBA 5.5 on the agenda today? I was not aware to sign up.
5.5?
Yes.
Okay, if you need to address that one, you can go to the podium and give us your thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kerry Adler. I live at 15323 209th Avenue Northwest in Big Lake Township. And I'm here to speak about the request for board action regarding the exchange of County Road 79 turn back to Big Lake Township and the county's acquisition of 209th Avenue to be converted to a county road. I'm still confused by this proposed exchange and also concerned over the decision process on this. The only notice of public notification I'm aware of is that the Star newspaper announcing that this would be on the June 23rd meeting. They announced that in their June 12th newspaper. I spoke at that meeting with some of my concerns. However, I believe it was already a done deal as the township agreed to that exchange that evening. I, along with neighbors that I've spoke with, did not receive any U.S. mail notification of the proposed exchange. I find this unusual as we received notifications from the county last year when they were doing some work on the road. We all received postcards in the mail saying that, you know, the Public Works was going to be out there. The proposed exchange is listed as a strategic initiative, according to the county, to promote healthy, safe, and livable communities. And I'm wondering, how does this align with that initiative? 209th Avenue is a straight 2-mile road with current 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is rarely followed. It is already extremely busy with large volume of dump trucks during the day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 5 days a week, and sometimes on Saturday. I assume these are transporting from or for Barton, Plaisted, and Knife River using 209th as a shortcut to Highway 10 or areas west of Elk River and avoiding the city. Changing 209th Avenue to a county road will increase speed and volume. County Road 79, recent extensive road work would seem better equipped to handle the truck traffic, albeit slower, which is why I assume 209th Avenue is their choice. Comparing the two roads, County Road 79 is a 4-mile-long road. 209th Avenue is a 2-mile-long road. However, County Road 79 has 37 residential access driveways onto that road, that 4-mile stretch. 209th has 31. So not that many less than what County Road 79 has in half the distance. County Road 79 has 7 street accesses, 209th Avenue has 3. Of that one road, you can get from 209th to County Road 73. The neighbors that I've been able to talk to were not aware of this proposed exchange. Their work has prevented them from attending today.
Excuse me, your 3 minutes have expired.
Can I close it with one paragraph?
Real quick.
Okay. I would request that the board delay approval of this time and notify alerted landowners by mail to explain the reasoning behind this and to solicit their opinions on it. Thank you.
Thank you for your
time.
comments. All right, that will end our open forum. And thank you, everybody, for participating and sharing your thoughts. Move on to item number 5 of our regular agenda. And we will be talking about item number 5.1, considering amending the zoning ordinance. And Nancy, are you going to give us a presentation on that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners,
Good morning.
concerned citizens. All right. So this is the same presentation that went to the Planning Commission where the public hearing was held. And I'm just going to go over that real quick before we have any discussion on the amendments. Okay, Keisha, you might have to help me. Just the green, okay,
Do you want me to go to the next?
sure. Is it just this green button that I push when I want to go to the next? This one here? Okay. Okay, so obviously this is a concern with our office. It's been a long time problem. It says since 2019, we've had 250 solid waste complaints, and a good majority of them are junk vehicles. We do have an ordinance that we've used for years, and I know that was one of the questions, and basically it's in the solid waste ordinance. And the way it reads is that if they're inoperable and unlicensed, increasingly people just go out and get them licensed. And that is why it's become unenforceable for us, and that's why we were trying to find another option. A lot of the issues have been talked about in the public forum. It's a visual impact for neighborhoods when you get 2 or 3 houses that have 30 or 40 cars, and I'm not kidding, on 2.5-acre lots. It does affect property values. A lot of them are repeat offenders. If we can get it cleaned up, they just start showing up. You know, I don't know whether it's an issue of hoarding, car sales, or people just like to collect cars and vehicles. They want to fix them up, but they never do, so they sit there and they accumulate. There are environmental impacts, you know, concerned with fluids that leak over time. And it's a problem with county resources. Staff spends a lot of time. We have 70 hours for staff to resolve some of these. It's hard to track because some of these last for years, and we don't get any resolution. This is an example of a 2.5-acre lot. Has been out of compliance since 2015. And I know Commissioner Dolan, you're probably looking at, you had mentioned on our definition of what would qualify as a vehicle here. There are some trailers here. We did take trailers out because there was a lot of opposition to trailers being included in this. You can see a lot of solid waste accumulation, which a lot of times goes along with this, and we can get that cleaned up under our ordinance. But the vehicles, if they license them, it's just impossible for us to get it cleaned up. This is, I think, the same property, just a different angle. Compare and contrast, the middle lot has several cars, the houses on both sides, neat and tidy. Several different locations that we're dealing with. And I guess I have to say, you know, people had mentioned, you know, when people come up for the weekend, obviously, you know, you're going to have people parked in your driveway when you have company. That's not what we're looking at here. These are people, these cars never move, or they move and they get replaced with new ones. And it's not just who's visiting and your own drivers in your house. We did look at several different options in writing this, and it's probably taken, you know, 3 years of going through different options with the county attorney's office on, you know, what would be a good language for this. This talks about the solid waste ordinance and what we have been operating under. Owners that have primarily farm agriculture, they can store different types of machinery. Otherwise, it says 2 inoperable and unlicensed motor vehicles are not allowed. Below is a definition of what a salvage yard would be. We did look at what other counties and cities are doing. They all have the same problem too. One thing about Sherburne County, it's become much more urban as we are closer to the cities, and we have a lot of subdivisions as opposed to some other counties where people have the expectation that they're in a residential development, and when you see that many cars across the street, down the road, they get upset with it. City of Elk River, they're more restrictive. They call it no landscaped area, so basically you can't park in the grass. They don't particularly say it's a improved paved area. I know one of the things that, you know, we did see a lot of the comments and things that were on the forum, and a lot of the comments came from people who actually live in cities. This does not affect you if you live in a city. They have their own rules. So I think there were some misconceptions on how this actually reads.
And Nancy, can you clarify, like when you say a city, the city of Elk River, if you live in the more rural area of Elk River, you are still governed under the city of Elk River?
Absolutely.
County
Elk
has
River
nothing
annexed
to
the
do
whole
with that.
township. So if you're in a rural area, of Elk River, you are still in the city. I was asked the question, what was the difference between platted and unplatted? We did this just for platted because that's generally what subdivisions are. Platted is just a definition of how it's been split off. There's legal descriptions. If you're platted, it's like block 3, lot 1, or there's meets and bounds properties, and those are the ones that have a long legal description describing the property. This does not affect meets and bounds properties, it's just platted.
In an answer, that would answer the concern from the person that if I have people visiting my lake property, they're not in a platted development.
It could be a mix. A lot of those old lots are meets and bounds that are on lakes. They're small lots, but they're not considered platted. It depends on, when they were split. Years ago, a lot of them would be meets and bounds. So you'd have to look at your legal description.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Nancy, trailers are not included in the ordinance?
We did not include trailers on this. Correct, Mark?
So there's a recommendation that includes
Yeah.
motor vehicles on trailers.
Yeah, we are going to talk about that a little bit because that's something that came up at the meeting is what if they're unlicensed snowmobiles and things like that are on a trailer? So we are going to address that a little bit, and that's a staff recommendation, so that would,
Boat on a trailer.
yeah, yeah.
So, Madam Chair, can you say a little bit more about that trailers? So are you talking snowmobile trailers, boat trailers, big trailers, every trailer?
Yeah, it could include every trailer that, could be a semi-trailer. We didn't include that in this.
So they're not included?
No. Do we address that elsewhere, Mark?
Our ordinance in section 17 does address semi-trailers, shipping containers in a different portion. This ordinance only addressed motor vehicles on trailers.
So, since 2017, we've been working hard with this because we were getting a lot of complaints. Went through several different versions. Did go out to the township. Mark and Dave Lucas went out, and they didn't like that version, and so we kept kind of working on it. As you read with the minutes, it went to Planning Commission, and the majority of Planning Commission thought it was good. We did have a lot of township board people at that meeting, too, in the audience. So part of this ordinance, there's 3 definitions that we're looking at. This improved parking surface. It does include crushed gravel, so it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be paved. Definition of a motor vehicle. Every vehicle that is self-propelled, including but not limited to all trained vehicles, buses, motorcycles, passenger cars, recreational vehicles, semi-trucks, snowmobiles, boats, and other watercraft trucks and vehicles used for racing and demolition debris.
And Nancy, for clarification on the improved parking surface, this does not include people's driveways.
No, it does not include their driveway. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about if they have a second driveway back to, say, an accessory building. But your initial driveway is not counted in that square footage. And then the definition of an operable motor vehicle. We mirrored the solid waste ordinance so that, we were consistent with that. So in this slide, it shows the proposed amendment as it went to Planning Commission, and it had a couple to be determined. The first to be determined was to talk about the percent of the property that should be designated in this parking surface. And then the second one was if there was going to be a maximum, depending on what the lot size was. Because sometimes you will see like a 10-acre lot that was platted. It's rare, but you do see it sometimes. The second one is what was approved at Planning Commission. That to be determined on D was 1% is what they came up with, and they decided to leave off the maximum. What is in red was after a lot of the discussion at the meeting, and then there were some calls afterwards, things that they didn't think that we had thought of. So we added the things in red to be more specific. There was a concern about not having trailers. What if the vehicles are sitting on a trailer, like a snowmobile or a boat, not licensed or operable? So we added that. And we also thought we should add that it should comply with side and rear setbacks. Sometimes people will move it right to the property line and they don't get it measured and they may be over the property line. So if they're gonna create a new parking area, we'd like them to meet those side and rear setbacks. On a platted lot, it's 10-foot side setback, 25-foot rear. And then the second driveway was come up. One of the township officials that was there that night, he says, I don't think you're solving this problem because a lot of times you're gonna have a second driveway. It goes back to an accessory building. If they can fill all that driveway up, then you haven't solved the problem. So we decided to exclude that driveway from being able to be used for parking. And again, it wouldn't be parking, your one vehicle. We're talking about storing a lot of vehicles there. And this talks about the lot coverage. I was emailing back and forth with someone who had heard about this, I think, on the Big Lake Forum. She was concerned, she said, we have a boat that we want to park in our yard. And so I explained to her, well, no, we're not prohibiting people from parking anything. It just is a square footage that would be allowed on your lot. And so since they went with the 1% of lot size on a 2.5-acre lot, it's 1,000 square feet. On a 5-acre lot, it's 2,100 square feet, which is plenty of room for a boat and a few vehicles. And after I talked to her, she's like, oh, I get it. Those other properties are a mess. We were just worried that we weren't going to be able to have some parking. So that was our presentation that went to the Planning Commission.
Any further questions for Nancy on this part of the presentation? Right, thank you.
Quick question, Mrs. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Dolan.
Excuse me. Nancy, you said the red additions on the proposed language, you said those were added after Planning Commission?
Yeah, those were added by staff. That's just recommended. So if you chose to go with the ordinance, it's up to you what you want to do with those.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure what was in front of the Planning Commission.
Yeah,
when they
it's
made the
everything that
decision
was in
versus-
black is what they approved.
Okay, thank you.
And Nancy, could you clarify when we talk about Planning Commission, who sits on the Planning Commission?
There's a representative from each township that we do planning and zoning for. So it's all the townships except for Becker. They do their own planning and zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Some of those are town board members. Some of them are just someone that the town board has recommended to represent them.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
And
Yes,
Chair,
Commissioner
can you
Fogarty.
also speak about properties that don't fall within this? So properties that are larger, that aren't platted. Is there anything that's going to help? Or can we do something in the future to look at those properties? Because
Well,
those are some of the biggest complaints in my townships.
Yeah, it definitely can be. When we pitched this the first time, we included meets and bounds properties, which is a legal description for the land that's bigger than 2.5 or 5-acre lots. Everything in Sherburne County, and you all know this, if it's in the general rural district, which is the east half of the county, if it's less than 20 acres, it has to be platted when it's split. Over in the ag district, it's everything less than 40 acres. There are definitely a lot of lots that are less than 20 acres or 40 that are still meets and bounds. They were split, years and years ago. So, yeah, anything that's meets and bounds, anything that's 10 acres is generally meets and bounds, anything above that. We took that out because we wanted to try and get something in a residential lot like this. People definitely have the expectation that they're not going to have to live by a junkyard or a car lot. So, that's where we thought it was the most necessary.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Smeezing.
We have a lot of areas where platted property is treated differently than meets and bound
Yes.
property, setbacks, and everywhere else. And I think one thing, when we plat property, that almost indicates that the property is shared in some way, right? I mean, we take a larger piece of property and we plat it. We break it up so that a number of people are able to use it. So that's a consideration here as well, I think.
I think that's a good point. A lot of platted subdivisions start out with covenants. And so when people move in, they have an expectation of what is allowed and what's not allowed. They don't necessarily have homeowners associations, but they still have an expectation of what's going to be there. Covenants can expire after so many years. I'm not sure that homeowners really realize those kind of things, but they do have that expectation, I think.
I think a lot of times on these developments that do start out with covenants, the first-time home buyers know it.
Yes.
But then as properties transition and trade and sell, that just kind of falls by the wayside in understanding what was designed to be acceptable in that development. And then it falls on to, if you're in a township, it falls on to, most townships have asked the county to be their planning and zoning administrator. And a lot of these issues that are dealt with come from township residents, that when they do approach their township, the township says, well, we don't deal with that. You're going to have to go right to the county. And so they just kind of pass it on then, but yet it's still township residents that have these concerns. So I've seen, I mean, I think we've all received a lot of emails, a lot of comments. We've seen the forum comments, quite a few of them. Understandably, we're not understanding that if you're in a city, this has nothing to do with you. If you have a driveway, this is not what we're talking about. And it's just that understanding of what it is and where you live as to what we're trying to accomplish. And we all believe in property owners' rights, all of us. But yet we also know that when there becomes a time where these kinds of situations occur, and residents that have sometimes the majority of their value is invested in their home, you have to kind of try to assure that there's going to be some reasonable expectation of what is in your neighborhood. And when you talk about property values associated with what those possibilities could be, there are situations where we are aware of that a home that is next to a house that has a hoarding issue, and they go to try to sell that house, these realtors point blank will tell you, you will not get market value for your property. You will have to lower it by $20,000 to $30,000. Now that's a big hit for most people on the investment of their home. So that's just what we're trying to accomplish here, is trying to come to some reasonable process that is going to help the county staff address these issues in a better fashion. Because right now we're being told that a lot of what is in this
Yes,
ordinance.
thanks for saying that there, Commissioner.
Okay, I don't know who that was, but thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So the first portion of this recommendation is simply to adopt the language that was presented to us, right?
Yes.
I'll make the motion that we adopt the recommended language.
Okay, there's a motion on the table by Commissioner Smeezing.
Commissioner Smeezing, you're 5.1, just the adjustments to
Yep, we take them,
definitions and rule of language?
we take them one at a time, yep.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a second by Commissioner Dolan. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries 3-1.
Madam Chair, can
Yes.
question for staff. One of the things that wasn't addressed, and I know we talked about it a little bit at Planning Commission, can you talk about the enforceability of our existing ordinance versus what we're hoping to accomplish and/or decrease the amount of time and resources spent on enforcing these things and how these changes will impact that?
Sure, Commissioner Dolan. Like I said, right now, we're working off the solid waste ordinance, and people say, well, why can't you enforce that? And if they do get licensed, it's impossible for the county attorneys to take that upstairs. With the new language, and that was part of the thing, we need something very clear-cut that is very, very enforceable for, and if they don't follow us, it came up at the meeting that this would be a burden on the sheriff's department. we don't really go through the sheriff's department. My staff handles it. And then if it, and we do give people time and we work with them as much as we can. But if someone will not work with us, then it ends up in the county attorney's office and they would have to take it to court. The only time we use the sheriff's department is if somebody's threatening staff and we will take them out as protection. But we don't want to burden that department. They have a lot more to do that may be more important. But we need something that the county attorney can work with and that's more clear-cut for judges and for enforcement.
Yeah, it has become clear as we continue to grow as a county and more subdivisions are coming forward. I've mentioned a few times that as chair for this year, I have signed more Mylars for development plats than I ever did as my 6 years as mayor in the city of Big Lake. And so this is just a sign, it's growing. So we're trying to get ahead of it, trying to create something that's gonna help people have that quality of life and that expectation in their neighborhoods.
Madam Chair, I would like to add that our hope, again, on that topic, is that this will be less staff time too, because it takes up a tremendous amount of time working on these. And I think, if it can end up in front of a judge at some point when they won't work with us, then it does take less time for us.
And I would like to see at some time the process we get to is when these issues come up, that the townships take them up first and have that meeting with the residents to have those concerns, have some of that process that goes before their body. Because a lot of these people are their residents. They represent them. And as it is now, they just say, go talk to the county. I think they need to play a bigger role in that process of what we're doing to try to address issues.
And we do get calls from town board members asking us to take a look at properties. So yeah, sometimes they see them or they're hearing from neighbors and they pass it on to us. So yeah, they are aware that they're out there.
Yeah. And this is another thing when you say that, Nancy, is to point out, the county doesn't go out looking for these issues. This is a complaint-driven process. And we do not go out looking for those issues. I know there's been some concerns. Well, what if there's a neighbor dispute? I think we bring common sense to the table on that one.
Right.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just if I could just add, the townships have weighed in on this pretty significantly with the results of the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Because for the most part, townships are represented by either town board supervisors in most cases, and in some cases by folks that are appointed by that body. So I don't think we've missed them on this process.
No, not over the last 3 years.
With that, just a little additional, I really appreciate all of the people that have contacted me via email or phone. Those calls and emails were numerous. I was not able to physically respond to all of them, so I apologize for that. I won't be responding, so if the public can note, I mean, it was numbered in over hundreds, and in 2 days, I'm just not able to respond to that. And I also, my township supervisors felt very strongly about this, so therein lies my vote.
Yep.
So I thank all for their understanding.
Thank you, Commissioner Philby. Commissioner Dolan?
And I agree with what everyone said here. This has been in the works for years now, and it's had pretty consistent give and take between the townships and the Planning Commission in those things. On that note, and based on, some of the feedback we've got, some of the concerns of citizens as far as what this applies to, what it doesn't, and as much as we deal with platted and unplatted property all the time and we understand what it is, I don't think that general knowledge is out there in the community, as well as the staff recommended changes post-Planning Commission, which I think some of those are good. At this time, I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on this, and I think there's one more back public comment period. I think if we give some suggestions and treat a second public hearing at the Planning Commission with the things that staff has added and maybe clearing up some of the maximum, minimum numbers, along with some education of who this, I am afraid of unintended consequences with this, and I am not comfortable with it yet. So that, I am in favor of doing something. I understand the enforcement issues. I just want to make sure that what we do doesn't have unintended consequences, and the general public understands what we're doing and why, prior to us passing it versus having to educate them after it's passed.
So then would you be looking to make a motion then to send this back to Planning Commission, look at the feedback that we've gotten and clarify and take the opportunity to provide the education and clear up the misunderstandings and such? Is that your thought?
Yeah, that would, my motion would be in that, and on top of, I think the staff recommendations that were added to this post-planning commission, I think they're good additions, but I would like that to be in the planning. I don't want to take a couple pieces of feedback from individual planning commission members, add it, and then kind of give it the blessing of the whole planning commission, because it wasn't truly discussed by that whole planning commission in that capacity.
Okay, so is that your motion?
Yeah, I'd make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Dolan to send this back to Planning Commission with a recommendation from the staff, and along with addressing some education and also addressing some of the comments that came in through that process. Do I have a second? Okay, this motion is going to die for lack of a second. All right, moving forward then. So we did consider the amending ordinance. We approved that. We're now on to considering the amending zoning ordinance for the general development regulations, parking and loading regulations proposal.
I think that's what Tim was just talking about as well, wasn't it?
Yep.
Correct, yep.
Yeah, the whole
Same
thing.
topic, yep.
I came here, Madam Chair, I came here today prepared to support the Planning Commission and what their recommendation was. Tim's comments, if those changes have been significant enough that we feel that it needs to go back to the Planning Commission, I guess I could live with that. But I think I want it clearly understood that the reason it is going back to Planning Commission is because of staff recommended changes that happened between the Planning Commission's meeting and this meeting. I think that's appropriate. I think that passes muster with what we're expected to do.
Commissioner Phobie.
So Chair and members, I don't have a problem with that either, but I also, and this is just much more work with staff, there aren't all townships represented on the Planning Commission. So by a township supervisor, and that makes a significant difference at times. So I would request that if that's going to happen, that those townships that don't have a township supervisor on the Planning Commission have a presentation at their township meeting as part of that. And that will drag this out a bit more. Maybe that's overreach, but, and I think that's already happened somewhat, or maybe that this has been presented to all the townships at their meetings.
It's been to some, I don't think all.
So that would be my addition, that townships that for sure don't have representation on the Planning Commission and perhaps don't have a township supervisor on that would get a presentation at their town board meeting.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Smeezia.
Lisa, I think it's, what you're talking about is fine as far as I'm concerned, but all townships have representation on the planning commission. Now, not all of them appoint supervisors. And what you're saying is maybe the communications between who's appointed and the town and the boards themselves has not been adequate. And if that's the case, I get that. I can live with that.
But I do also feel we have to remember that we do quarterly township association meetings with our townships. We just had one last night, and this has been brought up at those meetings on a few occasions. So it isn't like this has not been in the works for those 3 years, and they have not had the opportunity to weigh in, because I know they have.
Madam Chair.
So, Chair, and I would not make that a hard line in the sand. It's just you guys know me, I'm an extrovert. I'm thinking out loud, thinking on my feet, just trying to make sure, because I found up in my neck of the woods, that was some of what had happened, and don't want to, then I get in the middle of it.
Commissioner Foley, would you be comfortable if, when the planning commission takes this back up, that we do a specific invitation to the town boards, as opposed to going out to each of them, say, hey, we're going to discuss this, you have a rep, that's great, if you want to bring more, come. That way we just broaden the invitation.
Yes, that would be sufficient.
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Madam Chair, and to Commissioner Smeezing's first comment, your point is exactly what I'm talking about. And I think from just a general square footage standpoint, once you add setbacks onto lots, once you eliminate the use of a second driveway, you're talking about a significant amount of square footage on a lot that this has varied between Planning Commission and us. And that's the driver, is I want to make sure that that has the stamp from that group as well.
So with that, Chair, if Commissioner Dolan's willing to renew his motion, perhaps we should consider that.
Commissioner Dolan?
Not going to leave me hanging this time, are you? No, I'm kidding. I'll make the.
Just make sure you include the reason why.
Yeah, no. So I'll make a motion to send this back to Planning Commission to discuss and weigh in on the staff additions between Planning Commission and the board.
Is
I'll
there a
second that
second?
motion.
So there's a motion by Commissioner Dolan and a second by Commissioner Smeezing. And just for clarification, this is an understanding that this body is supporting this ordinance. We just want the Planning Commission to weigh in on some of the changes. That's what I'm hearing. Yep.
Well, I think that's a little bit of a stretch at this point. I think you should allow it to come back.
Okay.
And we should.
Just
Or something.
if I may ask for two clarifying points, the original motion made included a public hearing, and the second motion was a discussion. So just clarifying, is the expectation of the board that there be a public hearing scheduled and posted on the remand?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Dolan.
My suggestion would be, to be true to the process, I would suggest a second public hearing, because again, the Planning Commission and the public weighed in on the presentation that was part of the Planning Commission. These are significant changes. We should open that piece back up to make sure that it's true to the process.
Okay. Any
Is that
further
okay
discussion?
with the seconder?
That's okay with the seconder.
And then the second clarifying question was, there was a discussion about invitations. That was not included in the motion. Can I take it as the intent of the board that we'll make sure all township, and we'll send it to the chairs, are at least noticed of the public hearing and invited to participate if they want to?
And I think that's something staff can do.
Just want to be clear though, so, okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. All right. Okay, moving on to item number 5.3. Consider the amending the zoning ordinance for Section 18, administration and enforcement relating to the Board of Adjustment and Variances. You gonna take this one, Nancy?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you. Okay, so got to change gears here.
We'll let the room clear for a second. All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, as Commissioner Dolan, he was at the meeting, there was a significant amount of discussion, as you all knew there probably would be on this one. And basically, they wanted, yeah, I don't really have exactly what the motion is here for some reason.
I wondered about that as I was reading through it as well.
They recommended approval of the ordinance with the exceptions of items A, B, and C. It was kind of broad there. They wanted those taken out. That's regarding the creation and membership of the Board of Adjustment. And staff notes, Planning Commission meeting reflected the Planning Commission's recommendation regarding that. So those were significant removals that they were recommending.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Dolan.
on this, based on the suggestions from Planning Commission and the removal in the motion that they passed up to us, my feeling on this right now is that we table this decision. There's significant amounts of those removed portions that are in state statute, and I haven't necessarily got the weigh-in from the county attorney's office on what part of those can versus can't be yet. And I'm not comfortable making a decision until I know what needs to be in there via state statute and what could be removed, without putting us in a bad position.
Any other thoughts?
Well, Madam Chair, I'd just weigh in on this, this one, the same place I was on the last one. Planning Commission has made a recommendation. I would think that we should be following their recommendation. I understand what you're saying, what you are saying, but I hope that I mean, there was a lot of testimony from a lot of township folks that feel that we're not going the direction they want to see with this. And I think that we should make sure that we're hearing that and understanding that. And I would hope that we're not just making this move so that we can ultimately just do what they don't want us to do with this ordinance.
Any
Madam
further
Chair.
discussion? Commissioner Dolan?
And to Commissioner Schmiesing's point, I think there's a good share of the conversation and comments that will definitely be taken into account by addressing those. Again, my main concern with the suggestions in the motion from the Planning Commission is that it was a long conversation. It was at times relatively heated, and I don't know that their suggestion takes into account the legal ramifications of those decisions. The spirit of what they said is captured in this. I just want to make sure we're not putting ourselves in a bad situation going forward.
Commissioner
We're
Schmiesing?
in kind of an awkward spot here, because I don't believe there's discussion on a motion to table. Is that? And there hasn't been a motion yet, right? Okay, so we can discuss it some. Are we talking about sending it back to the Planning Commission?
No, I wouldn't be talking about sending it back to the Planning Commission, just giving myself and any other commissioners more time to look at the legal standards we need to meet within the language of any changes we make.
Bruce?
Perhaps to Commissioner Spiesing's point, if there's a motion to table and solicit a county attorney review of the Planning Commission recommendation, that would at least allow for discussion.
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion. I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of Tim. Go ahead.
May I, before the motion is, I take the Planning Commission suggestion to remove A, B, and C largely to reject the changes to A, B, and C. I know there was some discussion of, well, we're a recommending body, so even if it's required by state statute, let's throw it out anyway. I think the motion really was, let's reject the changes. Would you like to see the non-objected to changes and the existing A, B, and C, because those include what's required by state statute? Would you like to see that version? Would you like to table this to the next meeting to see that version and consider that? Because that's in keeping with what I think the Planning Commission recommended. And if there are further questions after that, then you can address them at that point. But I mean, I can tell you right now, our analysis is going to be A, B, and C. Portions of that have to be in there. Those are in our existing ones. So if we're just rejecting the changes there, we could look at that draft.
Okay.
Chair.
Mr. Phobie?
Number 4 in our RBA, does that last line states portions of the existing language and subdivision 3.1 A, B, and C, which are also included in the amendments, are required by statute, including the provisions, and you listed them there. Creating the board, or is there more to it than that?
It's generally that. Those are the big things. But we recognize if you were to follow the Planning Commission's recommendation and revert to the existing language, we don't have that in front of us. We can't look at it, see what it looks like, see if it works as a whole ordinance. And so my question is, would you like to see that and be able to react to how it would look, or simply send it back to the Planning Commission, period? Because we couldn't, I mean, Commissioner Dolan is correct. You couldn't adopt an ordinance that simply takes out A, B, and C.
So that, excuse me.
Well, I was just saying, you could do that, and it could go back to the planning commission and then come here again, couldn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I'd be fine with that, but
Yeah, I'm fine with that as well if we feel that's a need.
Yeah. And I would like to, at least when we are looking at adopting something, that we have the understanding and also the nod from our legal counsel that we're going to be doing something that is within the realms of the statute. So I would be in favor of sending this back to Planning Commission to get better clarification.
And if I may, just one more point of clarification. Would this, if that's the request of the board, would we do that as simply sending it back to show them a clean version to make sure that this is what they're recommending versus starting the process over again and having a whole public hearing? Because I think what we're talking about here is consistent with what they acted on, so I don't know that a new public hearing is necessary.
Right.
It's more to get a report on the exact language for you to consider.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'd be fine with that. I mean, it's been the planning commission, and, you know, we had people here today to speak on other things that the public was very interested in, and that's great, but I don't think the public has nearly the interest in this that that the town boards and the planning commission. So if it can go through that process, that's fine for me.
Yeah.
I also don't think that this is a sprint that needs to be pushed real quickly either. So let's not
do our
get
due
in a big
diligence.
rush. Let's be a little bit diligent and take it a little slow if we can.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, and to Commissioner Smeething's point, I think it's important to get, with the amount of back and forth that's been involved, I think it's important to take our time, get it clean, everybody knows what's what and what's going through, and I think this accomplishes that. But I agree, I don't think it needs another public hearing, but I think it should go back so they understand as well as we do.
Madam Chair, if I can just add to that, I mean, I think, you know, that there's a lot going on here, and I think it's very important that we are careful here and move forward and work with our planning commission, and not we've struggled with some things as of late, and I think that this would give us an opportunity to maybe get a little bit more together and moving forward again. So I appreciate the consideration.
All right, so we have a motion on the table then to send this back to Planning Commission for cleaning up the language and better understanding of what the recommended proposal is going to be.
I will make that motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Dolan.
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Phobie. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, maybe this will be easier. We'll move on to something easier.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Consider a resolution to, of number 071521-AD 2051, requesting MPCA review and approve the Sherburne County Solid Waste Plan. Hello, how are
Hi.
you?
Good morning. So, as indicated in the RBA, staff is seeking approval from the board to submit the draft solid waste management plan to the commissioner of the MPCA for review and approval. As discussed at workshop sessions, this renewed plan will continue current recycling programs and education, but is also going to heavily focus on developing and implementing programs that will reduce our dependence on landfilling. As indicated in the memo, all these programs that are proposed are described in detail in sections 7.0 and 9.0 of the Solid Waste Management Plan. If approved, the state issues a 30-day public comment period, and if there aren't any comments received, then the county is notified, and after that, staff will be bringing forth another resolution to the board for consideration and adoption of the Solid Waste Management Plan.
Great. Any questions? Nope. All right.
Motion to approve.
This just sounds too simple. Motion made by Commissioner Smeezy.
There's a typo on page 383, number 463. There's a forget.
Oh, there's a second by Commissioner Dolan. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for the bit of levity, Commissioner Smeezy.
That's all I'm good for.
Okay.
The solid waste was an easy topic today.
Who knew that could happen?
There was only one acronym.
Your whole
That was
career,
great.
haven't you, Dave?
All right, moving on to our next item on our agenda. 5.5, consider approval of County Road 79 and 209th Avenue road transfers with Big Lake Township and Elk River. Andrew.
Morning, Madam Chair, County
Good
Board
morning.
members. So we are here this morning to talk about and consider the approval of the road transfer of County Road 79 and 209th Avenue. To give you a little bit of background on the topic, this conversation has been going on for many, many years, but more intimately during the development of our long-range transportation plan between 2017 and 2018. We took a look at these specific roadways and knew that there was some transfers that needed to take place due to the functionality and how the roadways operate and function within the communities and within the region. County Road 79, we're looking at about 300 vehicles a day. 209th Avenue, we've got about 1,500. There's more truck traffic on 209th Avenue than there is on County Road 79 with just singular vehicles. We did go through all of the statutory requirements with both the township and city. The statutes for how you handle transfers with the township versus cities is slightly different. It does require a public hearing, which we did hold at the township of Big Lake. Interestingly enough, we did advertise that for 2 weeks in the fact that they have 2 official publications of record. We did post that in both of those publications of record as well. We heard from Mr. Adler much earlier in the meeting. He was in attendance and we were able to have some conversations in regards to the turnback. The township board also addressed his comments during that public hearing. We have not started any sort of design work per se on 209th Avenue, but following the meeting, Mr. Adler and I were able to have a conversation in the parking lot and I'll commit again today that we will have a public process and there will be public meetings in regards to the design of that roadway. We know that there are some issues on 209th. That's part of the reason that this transfer makes sense, is that as the county, it functions as a regional roadway. It functions as a more commercial roadway, heavier truck traffic. We know that there are some safety issues out there which we want to help address that the township is not able to address because of certain limitations. The township is in agreement and has signed this joint powers agreement and turnback agreement. The city of Elk River has also signed this. There is a slight correction in there. If you take a look, it's actually page 2 of the agreement. With the board meeting moving around, we did have to adjust the actual transfer date. So that would be this evening at effectively midnight. The 2 roads would transfer ownership. We do have plans to, I referenced public meetings. We do have plans, it is in our 5-year CIP to reconstruct that portion of 209th Avenue. And we are working on getting that budgeted for 2023 and working that into our system for preliminary design and get that started. With that, I will open it up to any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Witter?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Dolan.
Thanks for that presentation. As a matter of fact, I'm probably the highest utilizer of 209. I drive that road probably 6 times a day, sometimes more when I'm busy. And I just kind of wanted to address the gentleman's comments from earlier and kind of what Andrew said, and make sure people understand that it's in light of the way that the roads are utilized that it makes sense to do this transition. We're not doing it to increase traffic on a road. We're doing it because the traffic is already increased there, and it's being treated that way on our system. So I just wanted to make sure that people kind of understood why that logic is used. It's higher volume on a narrow road. I mean, there's no shoulders for people to walk on. People drive fast on it, and frost bumps get a little ridiculous. So us with county resources as a county road will be able to treat that corridor, I think, a little bit better from a volume perspective than the township has been able to, so.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Smeezing.
You know, I've been involved with several turnbacks, and this is the first time we've had some public input that has been not in agreement with it. The things that I did hear that were of concern to me was the number of access points. I know we're always concerned about that with these roads, and whether it's a township road or a county highway, I know we try to keep it tighter there, but is the road that we're taking over, is it acting more like a collector road than a county?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Smeezing, if I may, yes, it's definitely acting as a county road at this point. There's a lot of regional trips on there. County Road 79, you see local trips. You see the people that live along that road driving in and out of there. Obviously, we've got some residents on 209th that travel that road as well. But we also see a lot of regional trips going from Elk River to Big Lake, trying to bypass some of that congestion and stop signs and things like that we encounter in downtown Elk River, if you will.
Well, through engineering and design, are you going to be able to alleviate some of the access point issues that exist now?
On 209th?
Yeah, I understand. I don't know the road numbers, but I did hear him indicate that there were considerably more access points on the road we were taking over than there is on the road that we are turning back.
Yeah, I guess I can't specifically speak to that. I haven't gone and counted them, but that is something on a full reconstruction we would take a look at and seeing if there's some opportunities there to reduce access points and maybe manage that more appropriately so people know where vehicles are entering and exiting the corridor.
Andrew, I was curious, when I hear the number of access points on 209th, normally I'm assuming that those are driveway access points that would be hard to eliminate.
Correct. The
From
majority of them
residential
along
homes?
209th are driveway access
Yeah,
points.
so there's really not going to be a lot of opportunity to eliminate those access points.
Likely not.
Okay. What I also did hear is, have we defined how much is truck traffic that is coming from some of those businesses that technically should be using possibly County Road 79, but are taking the path of least resistance?
Madam Chair, so in response to that, we did some traffic counts out there in 2019. We saw about 1,500 vehicles a day out there, and about 30% of those were trucks. So it's fairly significant what we're seeing out there. So there's some need and probably some opportunities there to create a safer corridor from that perspective. I know those trucks sometimes, you know, they do have the appropriate braking systems to slow down and stop as quickly as they need to. But that still can be a concern for the residents that are traveling along the roadway and turning in and out of their driveways. So, you know, with some added shoulder and maybe some refuge areas, you know, we might be able to provide some of those safety features.
I guess where some of my concern comes is when you do have industry using a route that was designated to be mainly a residential thoroughfare, and by taking that path of least resistance, they're adding to the issue when they really should be staying on the county road that's designed for them to be on. So there is no way that we can like encourage, I know you've said at points that trying to stop truck traffic from using certain roadways and trying to get them back to where we really want them to be. Is that any opportunity to, like I said, I get concerned when I hear we're trying to take over a residential roadway with that amount of access points and thinking that we're going to improve an issue.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate those comments, Madam Chair. I would say in response to that, that 209th is functioning as a county road right now, regardless of who owns it. So it makes sense for it to be under our ownership. They're not gonna, the truck traffic isn't gonna go on County Road 79, the existing county road. It's narrow, it's circuitous, it's got sharp 90-degree curves, kind of littered throughout. Keisha, do we have the attachment there? Maybe you can scroll down to that. Should be after that, yeah. Yeah, would you mind rotating that clockwise? So you can see the highlight in, well, unfortunately, the colors are fairly similar. Don't worry about it.
That
On the
works.
left
You
side
can
of the
see it
screen
now.
there, you can see some 90-degree curves, and the trucks do not go down that. 209th is a straight road. That's the reason they're using it. Regardless of who owns it, they're going to continue to use it.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Smeezing?
I just think that, you know, I understand what you're trying to do here, but I think somehow, as you're doing this, we're gonna have to really work on mitigating those excesses and trying to make that road safe if we're, I mean, it's not safe now, right? I mean, that's what you're saying. We have, you know, we're gonna take it over and we're gonna make improvements to it. We're gonna have to step it up with some ideas, and it's probably gonna be expensive.
Right. And I do apologize, County Board, I had to step out for a brief moment during Mr. Adler's presentation, so I came in at the end of the access numbers that were being presented and didn't really hear what
I'm
they
sure
were.
he'd be happy to give them to
Yeah,
us.
do you want to repeat those numbers?
Yes, and I'd like to make another comment on it. County Road 79, which is 4 miles long, has 37 access points, residential. 209th Avenue has 31, so 6 fewer. And the road is 2 miles shorter than 79. And also on the truck traffic on it, there's many, and I didn't have a chance to drive around and look at all the side streets coming off county roads. But a lot of the county roads out there already have a 5, for the street rather, the avenues and streets have a 5 or 7 ton limit on those streets as residential roads. That would be another option to deter the traffic, is to put that weight limit, a 7 ton limit, on 209th Avenue where they're prohibited from using that, forcing them to use County Road 79. It's going to take 5 minutes out of their drive time to do County Road 79 instead of 209th, if we had a 7 ton limit on 209th Avenue.
Thank you for adding those comments.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Madam Chair, if I can just add, I think, you know, what you're talking about, reducing the weight limits on that road, if that was to be done, it should have been done by the township. And we should not have taken it over, because then it does not act as a county road. You know, I mean, our goal as county for all of our roads is to get them up to a 9 and 10 ton.
Correct.
Status. So, you know, and that, I think the reality of it is what's happening here is it's operating as a county road now that I get that. And I think that going around probably is not a good option either, but I think that through the miracle of engineering, they better be able to figure out some way to make that safe for the people that live on it.
You can do that?
We can do a lot, we'll see.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Dolan.
I would move to approve the jurisdictional transfer of County Road 79 and 209th with Big Lake Township.
Motion made by Commissioner Dolan,
I'll second.
seconded by Commissioner Phobie. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Aye. And my oppose is just because I'm concerned about the residential access points and the safety of the road. All right, that motion passes 3-1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, 5.6. Yes. You want to take 5 minutes? Okay, we are going to take a short recess of 5 minutes. back to order. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, item number 5.6, receiving the ARPA update from county staff.
Good morning, Commissioners. About a month ago, the U.S. Treasury came out with a compliance and reporting guidance document. I have it in front of me here. It's over 30 pages. So at the time, we recommended to the Board of Commissioners to take a pause so that staff could review this and get a policy in place. A lot of the things we were doing were accurate. We just didn't have them codified in a document. So we did email it to you earlier this week, and I just handed out a paper copy so you have that in front of you. And I just want to go over a little bit of what's in that document. The policy outlines the county procurement standards, the departmental request process for ARPA funds, the use of ARPA for personnel costs, the development and approval process for potential grant and assistance programs, the expense claim and reporting process, and the use of ARPA funds to replace lost revenue. So it is a pretty exhaustive 6-page document that really puts our processes in place. This has not been reviewed by our risk assessment committee. That's planning to take place on Monday. And then we also have a department head meeting next Tuesday that we'd pass this out to the departments as well. So our goal is to have this formally adopted on August 3rd once we get feedback from those groups. Anybody have any questions on the document?
Any questions? Nope.
Madam Chair, just
Yes, Commissioner Dolan.
well done and thanks for doing it. And pausing, I think it was pretty important for us to do that. And after reading through it and seeing what's in there, I think it was a good decision to pause and put some effort in. So thank you guys for doing that.
The guidelines are a little more robust than what CARES were, so we just want to make sure we were going down the right path.
Okay, and this is a document you were referring to last night for the townships as
Correct.
well?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
So we might share that with our local townships once it's formally approved. We would share it with them so that they can draft a similar document. Once that's approved on the 3rd, we'd start those approval processes. I know back in June we approved a couple ARPA expenses already. Those are all good and well. I mean, it follows the policy, but now that we have it in place, we wanted to slow it down, so we'll start bringing those back in August again. And then I mentioned last night at the township meeting that we are still meeting with a lot of different broadband providers. We've met with 4 in person already, and even Windstream has reached out to us about the potential of meetings. So we are moving down a good path, and we think we will have some projects to discuss within the next 60 days.
Will you repeat that? Windstream was
Windstream reached
Just gonna
out.
say,
Yes, and
who
we
are
are
they?
planning to meet with them here in the near future. We also met with Charter, CenturyLink, Midco, and Arbig, so we have a lot of interest from our providers.
They're smelling money, Commissioner
Beginning to
Smeezy.
have the density, not just between the ears, to make it worthwhile for them.
We do have the budget workshops coming up in August, and a lot of future ARPA expenses will be part of that process too. So I'm actually asking some of the department heads to include their requests in the budget that will be funded by ARPA. So cybersecurity, for an example, some of the sheriff's office purchases will be part of that discussion as well. So those will be coming down the pipeline. Our first compliance report with the Treasury is due on August 31st. So Tim and I will be drafting that, and we'll probably have that brought in front of you before we turn it in, because it is our first one, and it just kind of dictate what our plan is as we move forward.
All right. Based on how we handled CARES Acts, and this one seeming to be a bit more layered in process, I'm hoping, based on our discussion last night with the townships, that maybe we could have one of those meetings with them like we did with CARES to kind of make sure that we assure them that we're here to help them through this process and work with them on anything that, because it was kind of amazing when only one township raised their hand that had applied yet for the funds. So,
Yeah, and I'm actually going to throw out the request that we meet with them individually so we can talk
Okay,
to her.
good.
We have a lot more time with this
Perfect.
pot of money, so we really want to come up with a good plan. So I know broadband's on everybody's mind, but if there's other things they want to partner on, we'd sort of like to listen, and sometimes that's a little easier in a one-on-one conversation.
Perfect. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, any further questions for Dan? All right, thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next item, 5.7, consider the resolution rescinding the declaration of local emergency COVID-19.
So moved.
Finally, yay.
So moved.
You don't want
We're
my
gonna have to
20-minute
talk.
presentation, Felix?
Don't need to hear
Don't
it.
need your word salad today.
Hey, I got a full course meal for you. So.
Well, we do have a motion on the table by Commissioner Smeezing,
I'll second.
and there's a second by Commissioner Dolan. Any further discussion? Do you really want to hear it?
Why, did you have something that you?
Actually, I did not. I'm just giving you a hard time. Thank you. And thank you for a really hard year, but a good year. So it's time.
Yeah, it is time, definitely. All right, no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you. And didn't mean to cut you short, Bruce, but I think we're all on the same page. Okay, moving on then to the next item, 5.7. Oh, no, we did that one. Sorry, Commissioner Correspondence and Committee Reports. Who do you want to start with? Who's ready? Commissioner Smeezing, are you ready?
Yeah, okay, I can go. I'll work backwards.
Okay.
Is it the Sherburne County Township Association last night? San Diego Town Board meeting last night, and I was at Metropolitan Emergency Services Board yesterday. I did not make the MICA meeting. I don't know. Yeah, okay, well, someone was there and noticed I was, it's a good thing I didn't try to smoke that one by you, so that's all that I have, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Smeezing. Commissioner Colby, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. I had a substance use prevention meeting. We had the Great Northern Trail public engagement up at the depot in Princeton. Overall went fairly well, got some good comments, some challenging comments. Thanks Tim and Barb for being up there too. Had the announcement of Story Stroll at the Woodlands Trails Park here in Elk River, had a TRICAP meeting. Went to the employee anniversary celebration outside under the tent, had an empathy and equity committee meeting, had a joint meeting between the city of Princeton and Princeton Airport, which is the first since I've been on this board, and it was so good. They're talking. Had a great meeting with Congressman Emmer and Senator Benson on 169 and 4 regarding funding for the overpass, and thanks to all my colleagues that were able to make it for that. Had the MICA meeting and was at the Sherburne County Area Township meeting last night. And it's been a big week. So, lots going on.
Yes, there definitely is. Thank you for your report. Commissioner Dolan.
Yeah, so obviously the ones Lisa mentioned, meeting with Congressman Emmer and Michelle Benson up in Zimmerman, the trail meeting up in Princeton, that was actually very well attended, I thought. It was a good session there. Central Mississippi River Regional Planning Partnership meeting, 2 of those, EDA meeting, and I just wanted to kind of say, and I haven't shared this, I think, since we started the new format with the EDA and changed over the makeup of that board, but it's been, I think, really valuable. We've already had both our banking representative, Andy Voller, and today Ken Giroux, who sits on it from a construction standpoint. Both of those members have given reports on their business dealings within the county and where their industries are, and I think it's kind of been nice to hear from the local industries and members that serve on that versus just kind of the generic off-the-shelf stuff. So that's been working good. And I think logged into NACO a little bit virtually. And I think that wraps me up.
All right, thank you for your update. June 15th, attended the Board of Appeals meeting. The 17th was our EDA meeting, and the Connexus Energy Board presentation. We attended that, or I attended that with Dan and Bruce, and it was a really good meeting. It was great to meet the Connexus Energy Board. They were very happy to have us there and give us kind of a presentation and update on Sherburne County. And so that I thought went well. The 18th, I attended a business visit with the city for White Bear Clothing. The 21st, I sat in and listened on a 4-H meeting. The 24th, the CMRP meeting that Tim referred to. On the 28th, had my options board meeting. This, I think, will be one of the last meetings attended through Zoom. They are going to be transitioning to in-person now. The 30th had a CMRP branding meeting. And July 6th, meeting with Congressman Emmer, like Lisa referred to, and I agree, that was a really, really good meeting, and cross our fingers, hopefully we'll make some significant headway there. July 7th, attended the Violent Offender Task Force meeting, previously known as the Gang Task Force. On the 8th, another CMRP branding meeting. I did attend virtually the NACO conference, the 8th through the 13th. And I think we're super excited to know that NACO elected a member of Minnesota, Ramsey County, correct? Mary Jo McGuire is now the second vice chair for that organization, so that is super exciting for us. And she won very handily, so that was good news. And also on the 14th, attended the quarterly township meeting last night as well. So that pretty much, I think, does it for me, and I will concur with Lisa. It has been an interesting week, to say the least.
One point that I forgot to bring up from a CMRP standpoint, so my colleagues know, up until this point, CMRP has been functioning, and our staff, mainly Mark, has been taking a big burden on from the work involved with that. That group did approve a 50% contract position that they've gone out and posted for. So a lot of that burden will come off of our staff in the near future. So I think that's a good thing with what that department has in store in the near future. So,
yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Also, one other announcement, don't forget everybody that the Sherburne County Fair is in progress. Please get out and visit the fairgrounds and see what they have to offer. It's always a fun event. Okay, so at this time, we have come to the conclusion of our regular board meeting, so I'm looking then to adjourn our regular meeting and open our community health board meeting. Looking for an approval of the community health board meeting proposed agenda.
so moved.
I'll second.
Motion made by Commissioner Dolan, seconded by Commissioner Phobie. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Moving on to reviewing and improving the Community Health Board meeting minutes of May 18th, 2021.
Madam Chair, I'll move approval as presented.
Motion made by Commissioner Dolan,
I'll second.
seconded by Commissioner Phobie. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. All right, moving on to consideration of the amendment number 2 for the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Grant Project Agreement between the Minnesota Department of Health and the Sherburne County Community Health Board. SWIFT contract number 161310. Nicole.
Thanks for your patience.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning. This should not be as exciting as some of your previous meetings. So yes, there is a consent agenda for an increase in the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Grant. It's about $1,500 more than last year. It's part of a 5-year grant, and we're on budget period 3. So it really funds our continued planning and exercises for our general public health preparedness outside of COVID work.
Motion to approve?
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Smeezing,
I'll second.
seconded by Commissioner Dolan. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Moving on to item number 4, receive Community Health Services Administrators Bi-Monthly Report. Nicole.
All right, so I know I'm between you and lunch again, so I have a quick
Oh, don't
kind
worry
of
about that.
division update, and then a little bit on each unit, and then I'll also provide a quick COVID overview. Hopefully all good news there. So in the Public Health Division, we did have some good news following the closing of session that we do have an increase in our local public health grant, and that's effective now. I'll be submitting an RBA for the next meeting, but it's up about $58,000. So some much needed infrastructure relief for our funding in public health. It is one of the most flexible grants that we have, so it really can be used for many, many different public health activities. There is opportunities for additional funds coming as well, and that's for workforce development, really around COVID response and prevention. And I did notice a typo there, so you can note that, COVID prevention. But really, we don't have a lot of details about that yet. We just submitted a survey saying, what we might potentially want to use those funds for. And community engagement and mental health were certainly some priorities that we mentioned. And then we continue to work on our local public health assessment and planning. The survey has closed for the mail survey. We have those results, and we're fishing through them now and really kind of breaking them up based on demographics, so we'll have more information on that to come. But we do still have the electronic survey open, and we've gotten over 500 responses so far, and that's throughout the 3 counties. So we're really pleased to have that supplementary data to look at as well. An overview for the Health Promotions Unit. The WIC program did get notified that they will be getting a peer breastfeeding support grant in 2022, which provides some additional time for peers in the community to mentor other WIC breastfeeding moms and families. So we're excited. Apparently they've applied for this for a few years in the past and now did receive that, and that's a 5-year grant.
And Nicole, when you say peers, how do you, how does someone make themselves available to be a peer?
I think they first target past or present WIC clients who have breastfed in the past, and then engage those folks to really be the champions in the community for those that are currently having breastfeeding questions. And certainly the WIC staff are available, but it's really nice to have a peer available and kind of for some of those off times as well. So I'm anxious to see how this rolls out and gets implemented.
Perfect, thank you.
And their little WIC garden has done 40 pounds of vegetables over to care already, so just thought that was great to notice. If WIC clinics come back in person, they do plan to distribute the vegetables through there as well, so a couple of different options. For our SHIP, we're back rolling with some of our SHIP work, and there are some mini grants available out to the community partners. For car seats, distributions, clinics, and trainings have all been resumed, are in the works for this fall. There's been some long overdue people for our foster care and child care providers waiting for that training, so the list is long. For ATOD work, alcohol compliance checks have now been happening now that we no longer have a mask mandate. Some bad news that there were a few fails. I don't know a lot of details about that, but I'm sure more to come on what that looks like. And then we are also looking at resuming some of the tobacco work, and that would include looking at the county ordinance to make sure that that is up to speed with the state ordinance as well. For mental well-being, certainly events and things happening throughout this last year, but really just making sure that we're cognizant of the recovery and as people are returning to normal activity, what that might mean for their mental health and promotion. And I believe we just talked about the FEP agreement. Any questions on any of the health promotions activities?
I did have a question on the, some of the fails for the alcohol and tobacco compliance checks. Do you think some of it might have been because we've been almost 1.5 years dealing with COVID and people didn't have access to some of the training opportunities and?
I don't know a lot of the details. I know Mark was the one who reported back that, they definitely had some fails, but I don't have the level of detail at this point. But certainly, the mask mandate going away, I'm sure that was a component. People had maybe not checked IDs as much as they had in the past, and so now just getting back into the swing of that.
Okay.
Not quite sure. Could be new staffing as well. There's been a lot of turnover in different agencies, so yeah, maybe training hasn't been a priority in some of those areas.
Yeah, I was just surprised because my community, for example, had a few, and that's not normal. So it's just interesting as to why that would have happened.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
For the public health unit, just happy to report that for home visiting, we did finish all of our training for the new model implementation, which is MESH, and in-person visits have resumed, and staff are extremely happy to be meeting with clients, mostly outside at this point since the weather has been very cooperative, but again in home and out in the community. And all of our other supportive maternal child health activities are resuming. We certainly did offer them during our COVID response, but at kind of a limited capacity, so certainly back up to speed on those and really making sure that we're hitting some of those priority areas. Staff were able to do some in-person education in schools this spring for teen pregnancy prevention, and that will again resume in the fall. For other disease prevention and control, continuing with some HIV outreach and really trying to get that program back up and going. There's been a pause on testing and outreach with that, so that's an area that we're concentrating on. Our regular immunization clinics are back up and running, and those are Tuesdays, and we have also included COVID vaccinations in them too, so kind of really getting back to our normal routine with some of those activities. And they did have a fair amount of TB cases and Hep B to case management for this last year, and that continues as well. And we had partners in social services who helped us out during the response and took over some of our nursing home and community well cases, and those are coming back to public health now as well.
With a smiley face.
With a smiley face, so we do appreciate the extra support and really freed up staff time. Child and teen checkups, legislation did do some redesign approval this year. I don't have the logistics on that and what the allocation is, but they are changing the funding stream to us, and they are providing some of the outreach funds to healthcare organizations to do outreach around child and teen checkups. So as soon as we know that, we'll be providing that language. It will not go into effect until June of '22, but as we start to plan for budgets, we certainly want to have that knowledge at our fingertips. COVID. We do have a few new cases, but certainly not as many as we have had in past months that I've come to report. In June, we were at 99, and we hadn't had double digits since last year at this time. So exciting to see that those numbers have really come down. Most cases were in the 6 to 19 years age range, which is not surprising since that group cannot be vaccinated, followed by the 40 to 49 years. The dashboard continues to be updated, but we've decreased that frequency to just on Mondays. So if you were used to checking that a few times a week, just Mondays will have those new details on there. And for July, we've seen 1 to 9 cases per day. So again, pretty low when we look at that. I did do a quick check on the variants, and we do have a number of variants throughout the state. We have some here in Sherburne County. The most prevalent one is still that B117, not as severe effects as the new Delta one. Those cases have been quite low, and we've had very minimal here in Sherburne County. But what they did say is that those Delta cases have a higher rate of hospitalization, and that 99% of the cases that are hospitalized have not been vaccinated. So just some added details that the more we get covered, the better we will do with keeping up with that hospital capacity. And overall, this is since the beginning of the response. I just pulled some of the numbers just so you know where the hospitalizations occurred kind of by city, and then where some of our deaths happened. So, not surprising, some of our most populated areas had higher case rates. But surprising, looking at Zimmerman having a higher hospitalization rate than, say, the portion of St. Cloud that we had might be a little bit unexpected. I don't have details around who was hospitalized or what the outcomes were, but just, it was spread throughout the county. And the same thing for deaths. Certainly the St. Cloud area is pretty small, but had a significant amount of the deaths based on the population there. Again, not surprising knowing that's our socially vulnerable index area and that those folks may be at higher risk for severe effects.
Nicole, when you have these numbers in front of us and you say Big Lake and Zimmerman and et cetera, does that also include the township numbers?
It's all zip code data.
Zip coded, okay.
And Nicole, how many total deaths did we have in the county?
I want to say it's 112
Okay.
total. So really low compared to some of the other counties. So great response here, whether we have healthy individuals, they got the medical care they needed early, whatever was the factors. Just glad to see that that was.
Younger population here too.
Yeah, young population.
And I'm assuming some of the larger presence of the reported deaths, like in Elk River, because they have more care facilities.
Long-term care agencies, assisted livings, absolutely.
St. Cloud.
For our vaccination rates, I updated this actually a few days ago, but I should have waited until about 11 o'clock today. MDH has been corresponding with a few of us counties. They had worked on their geocoding. They knew that some of the data they had didn't correspond to the right zip code, and so now I see that it has been corrected. So 45 and 43 are now 51 and 49. So looks much better and much more where we expected them to be. So we have seen progress, although the progress has been slow. I think we've only increased our percent 1 to 2% over the last month.
And Nicole, do they think that like with the slowing rate of people getting vaccinated, is it because we probably hit that population that maybe are not going to do it? And until maybe more time transpires and they can get a better handle on what it is?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there are some community conversations being organized, hopefully this month yet. We're doing that with a few partners at MDH and the CARE Elk River Food Shelf. So hopefully we can answer some more questions that people have. They're looking for some local providers to be able to help answer those questions.
Thank you.
I will also mention our current recommendation is no boosters at this time. We're still waiting for anything real definitive, but at this point, we're not planning for any boosters of any of the vaccines that have been approved. And again, for the timeline for those under 12, we've heard fall. We may hear that those will be approved, and then we've also heard early in 2022. So we're just staying tuned and expect when that group gets approved that we might see another bump up, though, in our vaccination need.
Okay.
I did break this down a little bit too, just by age group, so you could see who is vaccinated by age group. Again, these are low. Now with the new data, it's actually a little bit higher. The total population's at 41 and 39, and the 65 plus is 88 and 87. So overall, we're making progress. We still have some lower numbers as compared to the state, though. And then again, looking at zip code and that social vulnerability index, just to make sure that you're aware, overall the quartile 1, which is an area of focus for us, is doing fairly well at 50%, so we're happy to see that. Elk River is way out ahead, and again, probably because of some of those long-term care agencies, the healthcare workers and assisted livings. And then the rest are somewhere between 45 and in the mid-50s. So progress has been made, and that may be the extent of where we go with vaccination here. And then just a few stats if you want to know what some of the numbers are. We have reached over 16,000 doses of the vaccine given here just by us at local public health and health and human services. We've offered 90 plus vaccine clinics, 70 here at the government center, 12 off-site, and 9 off the bus from 6 different locations. And they are at the fair tomorrow, so hopefully there'll be a few more vaccines administered there. And then we are also planning to be at a bounce back event in early August and early planning with schools about open houses and the availability to have vaccine available for that venue as well.
Are you offering free entrance to the fair if you get a vaccine?
We tried that route, but that didn't go, but we are close to the entrance, and I think the fair board was very generous in working with us and finding a spot for the bus, and they've been very helpful.
Perfect.
Any questions about any of the data?
Any questions for Nicole? No?
All right, then I will just remind everyone, hopefully you got an invite, the public health celebration for August 17th, 12 to 1:30 here in the boardroom. Just really pleased and happy to celebrate some of the efforts that public health had done for this past year, so really appreciate that and hope that you all can make it. We're also doing a bit of a video thank you for our volunteers, and we've started that process already with Dave Unzi. If it's something that you'd like to participate in, you can either contact Dave or myself, and we'll get you some time. It can be a short, even just a thank you, appreciate your time. Doesn't have to be anything real elaborate, but wanting to make sure that we connect and follow back up with them. They donated over 1,200 hours of time, and we're really great partners, and we just want to make sure that they know that they were appreciated.
Well, Commissioner Phobie has great video presence. She
All
does
right.
great. She really, really does.
Our Central Minnesota Mental Health Board did one, and it was really nice, really well done. So I'd encourage everyone to get involved.
Okay.
Heather from RSVP is also participating and hoping to use that as their platform to recruit some new volunteers as well, so.
Great.
If you've had adequate volunteers for all of your clinics, huh? It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they, last minute even, and some of them, we were in the rain and we were in the cold and, you know, They spent 2 to 3 hours outside.
Good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
You didn't get COVID, just pneumonia, huh?
Well, thank
Hopefully
you
not.
so much for your update, Nicole.
All right, thank you.
All right, well, that concludes our agenda for the Community Health Board meeting. So we will adjourn that meeting, and it does call for a recess. Do we want to take that recess while we clear the room? Secure the doors, we're good. Yep, and get ready for the closed session.